Okay, cool. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Easy Spotlight podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Lorne Jenkins. How you doing today, brother?
Hey, I'm doing well. You guys see I'm rocking a Liverpool scarf. We just won the Carabao Cup. So happy to be here.
He's representing the wrong team, but a team nonetheless. You know, I through my research, we're just talking about research, I realized that you went to school in North Carolina, Campbell University, similar connection. I went to school in Charlotte. And I didn't know this, but you're D1 track history and record holder. What sports were you doing in school?
Yeah, so high school and college was track for me. So I grew up playing basketball, baseball, soccer, pretty much everything. And then, fun fact, I actually stopped playing soccer in middle school because it was too much running. And then I ended up hitting puberty late and got really good at track and field and ended up running through college. So actually, fun fact, because I still got to shout it out. We still got some stadium records up at Longmont, a couple school records too. And then we had some school records in college, but they had some beasts come through and have broken it since. But no, I was all right. It was a jumper, sprinted a little bit, so it was roll humps. In case anybody's watching, roll humps.
And now you've moved back into the soccer world. You came back around.
Yeah, so I moved to London for 2 years, which I'm sure we're gonna get into. But I was tired of running. But I was like, yo, I still have an athletic bone in my body. And I moved out to the UK, and all that you British people do is drink and play footy. So I got into it and haven't looked back since.
And I like that. Yeah, and I'm excited to get into all of that part, moving to England. But today, a lot of the focus is going to be on your business, Mini Money, and financial education, financial literacy. You know, how you got into that is, for me, such an interesting topic, especially from an American perspective. For all the English listeners, you know, some of the way finances work is a little different in America, but all the principles still apply. And so I just want to firstly start out from the beginning and just a little bit of the background of how you kind of grew up, because I understand, you know, your parents have played a big influence in talking about money at an early age, which I think is rare. And especially also in the Black community, you know, is rare as well. So there's layers to this. And then, you know, how you get to the point of, you know, starting your own thing. So if we can start from the beginning, that would be great.
Yeah. So when I grew up, so I was 8, my little sister was 5. This is my mom's favorite story. We asked my mom to go out to eat every single day. Dang, excuse me. So we asked my mom to go out to eat every single day, and she got fed up with it. So she came downstairs and she posted a job opening for son and for daughter. Me and my little sister applied for it. My baby sister was too young at the time, but she participated in the interviews. So she interviewed us. She called our references. We had a whole application we had to fill out. And so we got hired as son and daughter. And so for her, she turned the house into an economy. So she paid us a salary every week, and then we had to pay for groceries. We had to pay for transportation. We had to pay for to watch TV and stuff. And so from a young age, I was taught you get some money in, you save some, you take care of your needs, you have fun with the rest. I got into debt at a young age. I had to work to pay off because allegedly my money went away, but I'm pretty sure my little sister stole it. But yeah, so that was my upbringing with money, was more experiential. So it wasn't anything that we talked about necessarily. It was more of look, this is how money works, and this is how you understand the value of it. Is me just my mom putting us into that position, and my pops too.
So your mum was very conscious about this. And where did this come from? Did your mum work in a financial space, or was she just conscious about you learning money from an early age? Do you know?
So my mom's always been super entrepreneurial. So she was an attorney and then is an attorney again. But inside of that gap, I saw her start probably 4 or 5 different businesses. Just again, probably usually to bring in extra money, sometimes because she was bored. And her big thing has always been the best teacher is always experience. I can tell you to do something, or I can let you experience it, and then we can have a different conversation at the back end of it. So her big thing, whether it was money or whether it was, why you should check the weather every day, was you're going to experience this, and then you can decide what you want to do from there. But that's always going to be a lot more impactful than me just telling you to do something, especially for a hard-headed kid. And so for her, it was look, I'm not going to tell you to save your money. I'm going to put you in a position where you have to decide if you're going to save your money or you want to pick up some extra chores to work. And I think that was that's the core of mini money and where we came from, but that's also like such a big building block in my relationship with money is experience.
So, so empowering you to make those decisions and make decisions in every aspect of life, not just money, but knowing from a young age you have some autonomy over your life and the way you should approach things. So moving into mini money and understanding when you started it and why you started it, when did that come to? Was that something in university and college at the end of the time you're starting to think about? I want to start my own thing and financial literacy is something I'm interested in, or how did that come about?
Um, which I think we'll get into. Like, this is a big topic in general. Like, so my mom was an attorney, my pops was an engineer, so I was like, I can either be an attorney, an engineer, I could play sports, or I could sing. Because again, that's what you see in the black community is either the examples in front of you or what you see on TV. And so at a young age, I was always like, I think it would be cool to run a business, but I've never seen what that looks like. Like I've seen small entrepreneurship, but I've never thought like running a tech company. That was just never something that came to me. And so I went to undergrad, studied economics, and then moved out to London and studied finance. So there was always been this like joy or this understanding or this love for me when it comes to money and how people interact with it, which is why I liked economics. But moving to London and getting more into the finance space, I think that kind of opened my eyes to the difference between like economics as a science and finance as a function. Um, dang, bro, one second. Let me get some water for real. My throat is tripping. Loki, you should keep this part in. Make some bloopers. So the big piece for me was working in finance. So I was working in central London. I had a finance job like fresh out of school. I was like, this is perfect. I'm getting more money than I've ever gotten my whole life. But I was working 12-hour days. Like would wake up, trek to work at like 6 a.m., wouldn't get home till about 7, 8, maybe even 9 p.m., depending on the day, and we weren't helping people. Like we knew more about money than other people. We had more time to do it. We had more resources, but we weren't necessarily educating people or making their businesses better. We were just profiting off of a lack of knowledge, for better words, which I think is a big sector of the finance space. Like not everybody's out to hurt, but also not everybody's out to help you either. And so I remember I went up to my boss one day and I literally told him, I was like, yo, like I don't feel like we're helping anybody. Like I'm doing all this work, but what are we actually trying to accomplish? And my boss at the time said, if you want to help people, you never make any money. And I'm competitive and, like I said earlier, hard headed. And so I ended up quitting that job. Fun fact, I got deported. So moved back home in 2019. And from then it was like, well, I can either get back into the finance space or I can try to do something about everything that I've been seeing and complaining about. Um, Actually, probably one of the bigger moments for me was so when I moved out to London, a lot of my friends were first year college students. I went to a pretty diverse uni, and so one of my like homeboys, first generation, like from the Ivory Coast, and he gets his student loan deposited. So I don't know if you guys know about East London, but the biggest mall in Europe is in Stratford. And so they close that mall down on the day that everybody's student loan hits, and they only open it up to students, and they call it loan drop day. So they're literally encouraging kids to come out and spend their student loans at the mall on shoes and clothes and food and just like look and fly. Which again, I'm all for fashion, but you shouldn't put that around like a student loan drop. And so 2 semesters later, my boy had to drop out of school. And I was like, well, like, what happened? He was like, well, I bought like 10, 12 pairs of J's and I had never seen that much money in my life and I had no idea what to do with it. And so I'm sitting here like, how is this like, it's a massive accomplishment for you to be the first person in your family to go to college and nobody in your life has prepared you like of how to deal with like the first check that you're going to get to pay for your school. And then I think to move into finance, see how we still weren't helping people, like spiraled everything into me wanting to start mini money.
Yeah, that's so interesting. That part about the the culture around spending your loan, and especially in England university. What were the differences just from a university or a cultural perspective that you noticed about money? Because I definitely have some opinions about how I've seen it different. But was there anything that stood out to you in a short amount of time? Although you were in university, so just interesting.
I think so. I would say that like university in the UK, kids come in a little bit more, I'll say worldly. I don't know if that's like quite the right term, but I feel like there's a little bit more of an understanding of life But when it comes to finances as a whole, like it's pretty much the same amount of knowledge. And here's like, and this is what I say with the financial space. The only thing that's different in the US is that there's slightly more access. Like I think there's more access to credit, there's more access to debt and different ways that you can get creative with your money. When in the UK, there's not as many, I'd say like that fintech space isn't quite as full as it is in the US. But there's no financial education. There's nobody teaching kids about money. And so some kids work super hard and probably work too much. And some kids spend their whole loan on like 15 new outfits. But it's a lack of education across the board.
Absolutely. I think I've seen exactly the same as what you're saying. So, just for people who are trying to understand the difference in structure from a financial perspective, one, there, I totally agree that the level that a university student goes in from a financial education perspective is exactly the same. They're not being taught money at a young age, they're not being taught how to use it. And to your point about access, I'd again agree completely. In America, you have a lot more access, I think, to get yourself in trouble, to be quite frank. Not to say that you can't in England, but just because a lot of the limits are lower, university in America is very expensive. You know, you can pay $50,000 a year. You can be coming out of university $200,000 in debt. And you can do the same thing in Europe if you are an international student. But in most universities in Europe, it is free. In England, it's capped at £9,000 a year. And so you're not going to go into this. Yes, you are going to go into debt, but you're also not going to go into this crazy number, which is sometimes unfathomable how you're going to get out of there. And also, the loan repayment system is slightly different in Europe and England, in that the US one is rough. Like, it's rough in terms of that you really are on the hook for this thing for the rest of your life, and there is no forgiveness. Now, I know, understand that there's always talks of programs and things about it being forgiven, but the eligibility and access for you actually getting through that is not always as there. Whereas in England, the program, I'm pretty sure people can correct me later, but there's not a huge interest paid on these loans. There's not interest accruing, nor after 30 years of paying your minimum student loan requirement, it is then forgiven. So there's a bit more you can get. You can get saved a little bit, but it's not to mean that you can't go into that trouble in the first place. But I do feel America, you have, I think it's just to show the whole American culture of capitalism, in that you can succeed as far as you want. You can also go the complete opposite direction as far as you want. So you've seen this, you've gained more perspective from England. You've come back, you say, I'm seeing a gap. I'm seeing people are not educated, and then you decide to start Mini Money. So can you just give a quick brief summary? What is Mini Money? Who is your target audience, and what do you provide as a service?
Yeah, so Mini Money is we started as a youth financial education company, and now we're just a general financial education company. The things that we teach to our fifth, sixth, and seventh graders are pieces of knowledge that people need in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. Because if you don't get it when you're younger, you don't just magically pick it up later in life. So a lot of what we do is we teach classes, we do one-on-ones, and then now we're starting to continue to get back into that technology space. So building budgeting apps for people, building classroom economies, building different technology to assist the educational piece and have like that longer-term impact.
And for you specifically, what are you noticing in the people that are approaching your business or are just being exposed? Because I think a lot of people, regardless of age, they could be 50 years old, and it's the first time they're actually thinking, God, I've never even thought about a budget. So what is like the thing that someone who comes to see you at Mini Money, what are they complaining about, should I say, or what's their worry that they're bringing to you?
So when we talk about schools and the general public, I'd say is like two different worries, same outcome. Kids just know that money is a thing, and they know that nobody's talking to them about it. Like they see it on the news, because again, this is the most that kids have been exposed to the real world probably ever, between social media, just media as a whole. Like our kids see so much. So it's a lot easier to see that there is a wealth gap, that things are expensive, that capitalism is controversial, and that's a whole that's a podcast in and of itself. Um but I think for students, again, it's like that lack of knowledge. And so it's almost that wanting to say, okay, like prepare me for something that I know I'm going to have to get into. When it comes to budgets for adults, and what we've started to do is that we're actually working in public housing as well. And I work in some of our senior sites, so 65 and up, and they come downstairs and it's people come. I can only way I can explain it is people come in and they're like, oh no. Like when by the time it's time to meet with me, people think they're in a bad position, or that I'm going to tell them that they're not doing well with their money, or that they're not spending well. And I tell people I'm 85% of what mini money does is psychology. We help people have a better relationship with your money, and then you tell me what you're going to budget and spend it on. One of the main things we preach is I don't care everybody spends their money on something, just budget for it. Like if I sit up here and tell you spend your money on this and spend your money on that, and that's not something that you believe in, you're not going to listen to any of my advice. But if I say you need to make sure that you invest in yourself and that your money is making you happy, however that looks to you is how that looks to you. We just need to make sure we get you a good habit and a good system in place. And so what typically happens is that people come in very closed off, and then the first thing I ask them is, tell me about your background and your relationship with money. I make them feel sane. I make them feel not crazy. I make people feel seen. And then we figure out how money should work for you in this conversation, and we try to break it down like that. And so I usually say that people come in like this and they leave like, oh my God, I should have been doing this like years ago. Like you made it so simple. And that's one of my biggest beefs with the finance world as a whole, is that it's intentionally complicated. It's not built for people to understand it, because a lack of knowledge is what people have perceived is going to make them the most profit. What we're really banking on is that if you educated people, if you encourage people to open up small businesses, to get more financially educated, that's going to make you more money in the long run than charging somebody who doesn't have who doesn't have any money interest on a credit card that they can't pay off. Like what kind of sense does that make? So that's I think like the purpose of mini money, and what we're gonna do from that is we're on the way up. We'll be a bank one day. You heard it here first.
I love that. So it's a very holistic approach. It's taken someone's guard down when they're coming to it, because for many people, money maybe is a taboo subject, and there's this fear associated with it. And you're going beyond just this is money, this is what money can do for you. You're going, who are you as a person, and how does this emotionally affect you? And you've talked about this in many different areas already, but I just want to get to some of the values that you've shared about your thing, because I love them, and I'd like to go into a few of them a little bit more, although you touched on some already. So the 3 values of mini money: don't teach, show how it has an impact on people's life; accessibility, providing accessibility to people and financial literacy; and then also furthering social justice, which I think is a really important space. And I think seeing your face as a person who's providing financial education is something I don't see anywhere. Like I'm not, if I look on me, someone who's interested in money, I see a Dave Ramsey, I see these other financial white older male gurus who are, providing wisdom, but not someone who looks like me, So can we talk about those values and just, what they mean to you?
Yeah. So when we talk about, we'll start at the end. So the social justice piece, the representation piece, as much as, and I'll be the first person to say that Black representation and the net worth gap and all of that is massive. The biggest issue we have in the country and in this world is not race, it's not gender, it's not religion, it's class. And what we do inside of these things is that we break the different classes into different groups so that they fight amongst themselves. 66, and this is low, 66% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, which means that 66% of people at least, like, let's bump that up another 10%, because that means that paycheck to paycheck means that you are 1 paycheck away from losing your job. How many people are 2 paychecks away from losing their home? 3 paychecks away. So let's say 70 to 75% of people are living paycheck to paycheck, and wealth advisors only serve 25% of people. Because if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't invest. So why are all of these wealth advisors fighting over 25% of the population? Because that's where the immediate wealth is. The social justice, everybody calls it social justice. It's at the core of it, it's actually long-term thinking. All of these investors and all of these banks keep saying, "Oh, we're long-term thinking." You're not thinking long-term. There's a stat that the average customer will make a bank between $2,000 to $4,000 over the lifetime. If a customer owns a small business, that number goes to $10,000 to $15,000. So why do banks not invest in people and like people opening small business? Because it takes longer to see that return. And so for me, my thing is that let's just have a level playing field. I'm not going to tell every single person to open a small business. I'm going to give every single person the opportunity to live their best financial life. And if that looks like them opening a small business, then who's the person that they're going to trust, or the company that they're going to trust? The person who believed in them when nobody else would talk to them or touch them. What were some of the other values? My fault. I get to go on.
It's okay. Accessibility, and people have an access to that information. And
I mean, look, this just isn't something that people are taught. If I had $1 for every person that said, "I wish I would have had this growing up," I'd be a millionaire. Like the amount of people who are like, "Oh my God, nobody has ever taught this to me." Kids in schools are like, "Nobody is teaching this." Then you get to adults saying, "Yo, like nobody ever told me to open up a second bank account. I never understood why I should save. I never understood like what credit actually means. I don't know what wealth is." So if we don't provide people with the thing that makes the entire system that we run on, if we don't provide them with the education of how the system works, how on earth can we expect people to succeed? So, and just a slight thing. The pure capitalism would educate people. We don't live in a purely capitalistic state. There is part capitalism, and then the other part is just greed. It's a dictatorship. We just don't see the dictators. Let me not, again, that's another rabbit hole. But at the end of the day, the more people that are educated on how the system works, the better the system should work. That's just how it is. And then the first one was experience, like learning through experience.
yeah, and you kind of talked on that at the start because you had said one of the things that your parents instilled in you is that it's not about just talking about it, it's about showing and understanding. So, I mean, you have already kind of gone on that, but I just want to touch on that piece at the end about education. And you said initially this business kind of started out focusing on students and, younger people who've never been exposed to something, not even understanding or having that conversation about money. What is a student's reaction to this? Because they really don't know what is in front of them unless they have a really great mentor, a great parent who spoke to them about this. They're not getting this from a school system that is going to prepare them. And so, what is their initial reaction? Are they excited to talk about money?
The feedback. So the two things I said when I started Mini Money is I don't want to write curriculum and I don't want to teach. The two things we do better than anything are write curriculum and teach. And it's because students are not dumb. We don't give kids enough credit. They understand that they are not being prepared for the world that they are entering. And so when we come in, the thing that we hear from teachers and students is, "Oh my God, they love this so much. They were so engaged. They wanted to learn." Yes, they wanted to learn because they're learning about something that's actually going to impact them in the very near future, as well as their like long-term success. Students enjoy it because we also don't come in and say, "Hey, look, let's take a test on what a bank account is." You can Google what a bank account is. I can tell you in 2 minutes what a bank account is. Do you know what you want to do with your life? Do you know how money is going to play a role in that? Do you know why we're psychologically not wired to spend credit cards the same way that we spend cash? I don't care what decision you make as a student. I just care that you make an informed decision. And if you talk to kids and you're just honest and straight up with them, I'll literally a majority of our content has come in because I'll sit down in front of a class and say, "What do you guys want to learn about? Like, what about it about money does not make sense to you?" And of course, there's themes, credit, how does that work? But then there's that deeper piece because sometimes we're talking to students. Man, I'll never forget there was a day where we talk about the scarcity mindset and how everybody thinks that if you buy experience over things, they say, you get more pleasure out of experience than you do from buying a purchase, a thing, an item. Well, there's another stat that if you didn't have those things growing up, the amount of like happiness that you get from buying those things actually outweighs the experiences that you would have because you're healing. And I remember I was talking to a group of students and I told them, yes, this is why if when you buy those things, if you didn't grow up with much, you feel good. And this kid came up to me and said, hey, like we used to be homeless and I never understood like why I always got so happy when I could buy something. And I felt guilty when I could buy something. Like you just made that so much clearer. And this is like going to help me and my family because nobody is telling this kid this. He doesn't see himself in money. And I think that's the biggest thing that we do for students and adults as well, is we help them see themselves in finances. Because like you said, when you view money, what do you see? You see Dave Ramsey. Or if you're in the black or brown community, you see rappers, you see singers, you see athletes. They got a bunch of nice houses, they bought cars, jewelry. Yo, what if you just want to live on a farm and chill? That's also success, but that's not what we see. So we help kids and adults see themselves in money.
That piece about the what you've seen growing up and then the guilt and association. So my personal experience is interesting. So my wife, her mom is a very successful business owner, and from a financial perspective, there's always been abundance. So the in terms of like the scarcity mindset, there's this freedom. She's not a big spender at all, my wife. She really doesn't spend money on anything, but there's no kind of fear associated with money, and that there's going to be more in the future. Where I have always had this kind of mindset that I have money, I need to protect this. I need to protect this at all costs. Why are we spending on this? I can't buy this $2 extra cheese at the store because I can get it for $1 less here, and it only through being with her and living with her have I allowed myself to slightly open up and kind of be like, okay, the trend is that we're going to continue making money and making the right decisions because we've shown that in the future. So here we can be a little better and spend money here, but we can still that. And that's only because I was close to it. But so many people aren't going to get that, as you said. Like it's going to be guilt associated with it, and you're not going to be able to let that go. So I find that piece so interesting from a the kids are seeing that from an adult perspective. What is the number one thing you think they can, before anything else, the first, they've not thought about this in the future, they're now getting to it, they've come to you, their guard is up. What is the first thing that you usually tell them to do beyond, the holistic? What's the more practical step that you tell them to first take a look at?
So from an emotional piece, I have people write down their goals. I have people tell me how they feel about money, and I have people write down their passions. So we say that your habits matter and your systems matter. So your habits are going to be on what you see. So most times, for most people, money equals survival. I get this money in, I can pay rent, I have a place to live. What we have to start showing people is that money can equal your future, which is investing, which is saving, which that's what that looks like. But then we also need to like show people that money equals your passions, money equals your happiness, which is why I end with passions. Because most times by the time we get there, people are like my goals. I want to save money. I want to increase my credit score. I want to start my 401k. Beautiful goals. I will never talk bad about that. Of course, be financially healthy. Passions. What do you want to do for fun? What lights your heart on fire? And most people get stumped. They're like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, but what do you get excited about? I play soccer. Like, I am one of the best beer league athletes in Denver. You can come check me on that. I'm not trying to go pro, but I love to play beer league soccer. That is my passion. It's what I love to do. And so a lot of my extra spending and the reason that I work harder is so I can go play beer league soccer. If you don't have that passion, if you don't have that purpose, then money only operates as a way for you to pay rent. I don't want you to just pay rent. I want you to be like, yo, the reason I'm working is because I can go out and go skydiving on the weekends. Cool, go do that. And then from a system standpoint, y'all, if you don't take nothing else away, 4 bank accounts, 2 checking accounts, and 2 savings accounts, because our systems are the thing that make us not have to think about money anymore. So we want to have an emergency fund. Every 90 days, we're going to experience some type of financial emergency. Car is going to break down. You're going to get a cough, have to go to the doctor. Something's going to happen. We save because those things come up. So it's going to go up, 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 up. We have an emergency. It may drop, but it's going to consistently raise. Then we have what's called the cash flow savings. So our cash flow savings is what's going to provide us like that, like like almost like a life jacket. It keeps us afloat. Like, let's say there's a concert that comes up that you want to go to. There's a wedding that you want to go to. There's going to be some type of monthly expense that we don't plan for that we also want to have money aside for. So let's say you put $100 in your cash flow account. Your favorite artist is coming in town. Boom, $100 right out. But that, again, that keeps money flowing and that allows you to do the things that you want to do. And then we have a checking account for just your bills. You pay your, the 4 walls of budgeting, your housing, your food, your transportation, and your self-care. So you make sure that you as a human being are taken care of, and that all comes out of one account. That's where it's okay to use a credit card, because you're not going to spend more at a grocery store because you have a credit card. In theory, you should spend on your needs the amount you need to spend on your needs. And then we have a totally separate checking account for your wants. For me, this is my brunch fund. I love mimosa. It is my toxic trait, and that's okay. And so I say, look, people hit me up. Yo, you trying to go to brunch? I pull up my wants account. If there's money in there, I'm going to brunch. If there's not money in there, I'm not going to brunch. But it's not something that I have to sit and actively think about. I have my money that allows me to have fun. I have my money that allows me to take care of my bills. I have my stability, and I have my security in my savings accounts. At the end of the day, there's a million things about this life that you need to be worrying about. Worry about your relationships. Worry about how you eating, how you sleeping, where you going, what you like to do. We want to take money out of that as much as we possibly can. So you put it where it needs to go, and you go do the million other things you need to do in life.
Can you talk about just the psychological impact of the 2 checking accounts and the 2 savings accounts? Because I think people will glaze over what you just said there, and why a lot of people will go think way further beyond and be like, well, they'll have rationales as like, well, I can put all my savings in one account and I'll get my 2% interest, all in that. But why is it important to have those 2 and 2?
So for the checking accounts, it takes out guilt for spending on yourself. Most people need to spend more money on themselves. The people who need to spend the most is mostly people who have kids too. The people who have kids are always like, oh, I can't spend money on me. This is what I tell people. Let's say you got a house, you got investments, you got your family, you got kids. At the middle of that is you. So we can invest and do all these different things, but if you're not taken care of, everything around it is going to fall off. So what that separation of checking of like wants and needs is that it's not something that you have to think about with your bills. And then you know that this fund money is carefree and guilt-free spending. Guilt is probably the number one thing I see people come in with. If I can take guilt away from you when you're spending, money is a tool. So what you can spend that money, and if you look at it the right way, it's a good purchase. And if you look at it the other way, it's a bad purchase. But your view on it is what makes that good or bad. And then from the savings account side, what that really does is like, so we say that the emergency fund is that stability. It's to make sure that when something happens to you, you know that your whole world isn't going to be, you're not going to have to sell your home. I've never met, actually, one of my favorite things was this client that I was working with. She was younger, and she calls me, and we had worked on getting her an emergency fund set up. And she calls, she's bawling. Oh my God, Lord, my car broke. Like somebody broke into my car, my window smashed. I was like, yo, like, I'm really sorry. You okay? She's like, I'm so happy. Like, I have the money to pay for it. And I was like, yo, like, what? She was like, yeah, like, it sucks. My window got broken, but this is the first time in my life I've had the funds. I haven't had to go scramble for it. I haven't had to go not pay a bill. Like, so of course she didn't enjoy having her window broken, but she also enjoyed having the freedom and have planned to be able to take care of it. But now, if our savings only meets our emergencies, then we don't see our savings for, let's say you want to go buy a new coat, you want to go travel. There are larger purchases in life, not only that you like, that we should be able to make. And that's the thing that makes me most upset, more upset than anything, is that we think because you have a lack of money that you somehow have less rights, or that you shouldn't have self-care, that you shouldn't have like good things come in your life. There's a pretty good chance the reason you don't have a lot of money is because the system that you're in has not been serving. And then that's for that same system to tell you that you then don't deserve nice things is the most backwards way to look at it. And so that cash flow savings for a lot of people is very healing. That like allows you to save up over time and save up for things that you want. Travel is probably one of the biggest things that I see. People love to get out, but poor people and people who are living paycheck to paycheck are told, oh, you shouldn't travel. Why the hell shouldn't you travel? I should live in a system where I can afford to travel. Bro, don't get me started on the UK holiday system versus like the time off. When I started my first job, The British haven't figured everything out, but they know how to take some time off. We need to figure that out over here for sure.
I love that. That is as soon as you're going down there, that's where I was initially going. Not on the British holidays, but the difference in culture in general. Because you could not be more right when you're just saying about how this system is designed to do it. And I just love the point that you know, it is so much push that if you are it's like what Dave Ramsey said. If you can't afford to it, you're not going to do anything in your life. Like, and it's really taking out the class system in America. That like, okay, because you're at the bottom class, you cannot enjoy life. You need to scrap and pull. And I love the way that you have structured that to say, why should you be any different than anyone else just because you started off different? You didn't choose where you were going to come into the world, and so there's no reason for you to not have the same as everyone else. Just because the numbers don't add up doesn't mean anything else. I love that piece. Before you mentioned the bank, and I want to just dive into that a little bit. Back one day, have you watched the movie The Bank of Dave? Because that's what initially came to mind.
No, I haven't actually. I'll put it on my list.
So it recently came to Netflix, right? And this is where I'm thinking of you, and everything you've spoken to is going to this. And the premise of the story, not to completely ruin it, but it's a successful businessman in England, in the north of England, in which is generally a lot more working class than the south. So London, people have a lot more money. They come from a better background, and this guy's a successful business. I think from he's an automotive dealer, like rents out vans and stuff. And he's seeing people in his community that cannot get a loan through the bank, even though they just need what they're asking for is not a lot, but just because of the way the system is set up, it's not helping them. And so he sets out on this mission to help them, and also learns about the wider system as a whole. Is that England being a very historic country, a lot of old timey things. A new bank hasn't been opened in England forever. So he sets about going on this process of learning how you open a bank and trying to do it. And you can kind of see where the story's going. But I want to kind of go to your version of Mini Money becoming a bank. Where the parallels is it in helping the community, the people who don't have access, and what do you kind of see the future from a bank perspective?
Yeah. So it's a more recent one. So I was at a meeting at some super high rise in downtown Denver, meeting with like a mayor's group. It's a bunch of super high net worth people there, and I'm trying to convince one of the girls on the committee to like come help out with Mini Money. And she goes like, as we're on our way out, she goes, yeah, like whenever Mini Money like moves into an office like this, I'll definitely come help you out. And the only thing I could think was that we're not going to be a high rise. We're going to buy out every single payday loan firm who is like charging 40% interest in low income communities. Like when I say Mini Money is for the people, it is genuinely an organization that serves the people in their best financial interests. If I can get you to trust me, if I can get you to stick to a budget, do you know how easy it is for me to get you to open up a checking account? Banking is the easiest thing in the world. Getting people's trust, getting people educated, getting a community to trust you with their finances, not just their finances, but their plans, their life goals, their aspirations. That's what we're building the base of right now. To open up a checking account, you need a little bit of extra change. There's investors with millions of dollars are doing that right now. But all of these banks spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on advertising every single year because they don't trust folks. Your insurance could be in the same place that your bank account is, that the same place that your investments are in, but it's because people have to shop around because there's such a lack of trust in the financial world. So we're getting into the financial space as an education company who's empowering and uplifting folks. Let's say there's a 14-year-old kid who we've taught how to work with money, we taught his family how to be better with money, and we helped him open up a small business. Who's he going to want to bank with when he turns 18? That's easy. So for me, it's okay. Yes, we start with the education. That's probably the most difficult part. We get into technology to be able to increase like access to folks, be able to expand our reach. And then from there, you get into the banking world. That's where we're headed.
I love that. And so I'm going to bring it to the end. I think a lot of people who are listening to this may not have been exposed to money at all. This might be their first time in which they're actually thinking about it from a different way. And if they were to go in and try and look for a little bit more information on this, or even get in contact with you, you offer one-on-one coaching, you offer a lot of different things. Where can they find that?
For any of like our educational stuff, minimoney.app. So that's pretty much for all of the work that we do in schools, one-on-ones. We've got the contact form on there. If anybody just wants like a hands-off, like we call it Money 101. And so it's modules that just takes you through the basic understanding of financial literacy. That's at learn.minimoney.app, but that's all through the website.
Mm.
I'd say follow us on social media as well. So Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm trying to get on TikTok, but I can't really keep up. That is where we post a lot of our just like content, and we get to see me take old ladies to the bank. So yeah, that's good.
I love that. Well, Lorne, I appreciate you. I think what you're doing is super important. I think the perspective and angle that you're taking at this is so unique and so needed. And so I urge everyone to check out your content. If not check out your content, at least start to get interested about your money and consider it. Think about what you're doing, what you're spending on, because it is so important. And we'll do this again in the future. And when the Bank of Lorne is open, I'm excited to deposit some money. So I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me.